Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck. But that is what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Virginia Wornstaff. Virginia's wise words to entrepreneurs and the rest of the world is use your power for good. Virginia is the CEO of OSP Microcheck, who do really cool things with microbes and literally better the pond. Virginia uses science to support people, to make the world a better place, and has an incredible gift to make science fun. She's just really cool that way. From her humble beginnings in Fort Assiniboine, Alberta, population 179, Virginia is creating ripples that go worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Virginia Wornstaff. Virginia Wornstaff, the CEO of OSP Microcheck, the winner of the James Pond Award while we were at a Tech Canada meeting without Dave McLean. We'll give Dave McLean a shout out. But in Kelowna for a tech meeting, and I met you, and because you contributed so much to the day, had these big ahas, your incredible genius had just popped out and emerged. I want to really welcome you wholeheartedly to the Better the Pond podcast. Virginia, it is wonderful to have you.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
This is going to be a great conversation. I know it already. So to start off, tell my listeners a little bit about OSP Microcheck. Who are you and what do you do?
So we're a science-based company. We've been around for about 35 years. We were born out of a sort of a think tank research group that researched a very specific molecule that then turned into a product that controls microbes. So it's like an industrial pesticide, essentially. And the business just sort of grew around that product. And so 35 years later, we have two product lines. One is industrial microbiology. So we test for bacteria and different types of microbes, primarily in oil and gas, but in a lot of other peripheral, industrial, or energy-related markets, which is super fun, like DNA level testing, all that qPCR stuff that we did during the pandemic. We've been doing that to find microbes for years. And then the other side of it is we have chemicals that control it. So we're identifying a problem, empowering people to find microbial issues, and then we're helping them to solve that problem with different types of chemicals.
So would you say that the company grew organically?
Yeah. Like a microbial population just kept going exponentially.
Interesting enough. So when the company started, this is fascinating. I didn't know this. Was this something that sort of you set out to do to find these microbes and whatnot, or was it just sort of because you said it was a think tank, and it just sort of just naturally progressed from that point?
It actually started with the chemistry. So it's a really cool molecule, and it's used globally in lots of different industries, from like makeup and paints and coatings and things like that. And where we started was it's like the granular product. It's kind of like salt, like a really coarse salt is what it looks like, and we could turn it into solids. And so in the world of chemistry, when we're looking at treating industrial applications, you're hauling around a lot of water that these chemicals are like dissolved into, or different types of solvents. And when we have a solid chemistry, we can use it without hauling water. So it's very efficient. It's like from a safety and HS&E perspective, it's easier for handling. And its primary target is to control microbes, but it does it in a way that's very compatible with a lot of different systems. So once we started controlling microbes, it's like, prove it. You're controlling them, you're treating them, you're telling me this. And so a lot of the ways that we identify how many bugs we have and if they're problematic bugs is rather archaic technology. Like you've seen plate counts, or we call it growth media, where you put the microbes in there and see if they grow or not. And especially within the last few years with the onset of, all the research into microbiomes and
Mhm.
how they contribute to all these different places in the environments and systems, that this technology just keeps evolving and becoming more accessible and more adaptable. And so we've just been continuing adding that into our portfolio to the point where it's actually probably what we lead with our company rather than the chemicals. We lead with the testing.
Wow. So, how many different industries are you involved with? I know oil and gas, obviously, and who else do you get involved with?
Uh, Geez, we've been everything from like campsites and RVs. We used to put chemicals into all of the outhouses in Parks Canada across Canada.
Okay.
We're in geothermal and lithium extraction from water. Um, we worked in large soda plants, automobile manufacturing, like
Wow.
the depth and breadth. Basically, you got to think it like where there's water, there's microbes.
Hmm.
That's it. And if you think that we can't create sterile um, facilities, like even a hospital, it's hard to keep things sterile. We're
Right.
never going to keep any of our industrial applications sterile. So there's microbes there, and they contribute very significantly to things like corrosion, um, uh, creating toxic gases. There's also good microbes. I'm talking about the bad ones,
Yeah.
but all the bad ones, they can completely turn a facility upside down, creating pads and biofouling. And it's something that we've sort of like kept off to the side. Like, well, if all the other things are going right, what could it be? Well, it's microbes. We'll just call it microbes. They're always there, right? And so now we're drawing that out with all this really cool testing technology and really being able to demonstrate not only the problems that they're causing, but how we're solving them.
Wow. I mean, it's just something that I don't think most people really think of,
No,
right?
no.
It's just, man, you have the expectation that, well, I know that things will be sterile or this will be taken care of, or, it just sort of happens, but it doesn't really happen magically. It's people like you that see, look at the impact you are bettering the pond, literally.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we're going to get to that. So thank you so much for that, Virginia. So now the next question is, what got you from being a gosling? And I mean, where were you hatched? Where did you start life? You were born at a very, very young age,
Was.
to leaving the nest. Now, this is, I want to find out, did you actually leave, take the leap and fly, or were you gently nudged, or were you shoved out of the nest? We'll figure out what that looks like,
Yep.
to where you are today. So, Virginia Wornstaff, what is your backstory?
I'm a farm kid from northern Alberta, born and raised on a farm up there. And
Where in northern Alberta? That's northern Alberta is a big place.
it is, there's not a lot of people up there. It is pretty big. So a small town called Fort Assiniboine,
Fort
which,
Assiniboine.
yeah, is kind of in between Swan Hills, Whitecourt, and Barhead, if you know any of those.
I know what my son worked in Bar. My son worked in Whitecourt. I have friends in Barhead, Camp Creek. I know
We
the area.
probably know them.
All
It's that
right.
small. Population 179 people. My entire high school fit on a bus. I graduated with 9 people. It was fun. I'm so grateful for my upbringing, and left home when I think the first time I jotted out was 16. Kind
Oh.
of like you, grade 12, I decided I needed to go somewhere new. Um, and then straight into university in Camrose. Um, did my first year of university, and it felt very ambiguous to me. Like, why am I taking courses on Old English and Shakespeare when I want to do science things? And so I took some time off, went and traveled, and then a girlfriend of mine was going to NAIT, so to trade school, and so that's where I ended up. I did 3 different trades. Started with chemical engineering technology and fourth class power, and then graduated finally from petroleum engineering technology.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So now let's back up the bus here a little bit. So growing up in Fort Assiniboine, there's a population 179 inclusive. Um, and yet, so did you have a farm up there as well growing up?
Yeah, we did. So my dad, we actually had a farm supply store, and that's where my parents started out there. And
Hmm.
we ended up selling that. My dad ended up working for a company that focused on power fencing, and he's continued on the ag side of it. And then my mom and I was the oldest of four kids. We looked after the farm while he was gone, and so we went through mostly cattle. We went through sheep. We have lots of ducks, and we have pigs and goats, and we did a little bit of everything. And it was mainly about what was the easiest for us to look after as a family while my dad was on the road, kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, my mom's family was all in Fort Assiniboine as well. So all my aunts and uncles and my
Hmm.
cousins were there. Um, it was tons of fun. Yeah,
Very, very community driven, right?
absolutely.
And where did your siblings end up post Fort Assiniboine?
Right now, as of late, they're everywhere. I got a brother in Florida, a sister in New Brunswick. My baby sister Heidi's still in Whitecourt, so she's got my two nephews there. But they all ended up mostly in trade sites as well. Both my brother, who's the baby of the family, and my sister, who's closest to my age, she did pipeline consulting, and then they both ended up in construction, mostly commercial side of things right now.
Hmm.
Um, and then Heidi is just back to the workforce after momming for a number of years. And she's actually doing a lot of support in the community. Again, these community efforts with connecting seniors to resources in the community. And so
Oh,
I'm
neat.
super proud of her for all that. And she loves it. She's so good at it.
Awesome. Couple more questions. So you said that when you were 16, you left the nest. So you chose to spread your wings and fly?
Running leap, get me out of
I mean, yeah,
here. Fly down.
couldn't get out of there fast enough,
That's
eh?
right.
Okay. So now we know you're a go-getter. Okay, so you weren't shoved out, you left on your own. Okay. One question for you is, looking back, what do you think is one of the biggest lessons that your father ever taught you or that you learned from him?
Hmm. Hard work. I mean, that guy just committed. Uh, he was always one of my favorite things ever was, and I still remember it, and I tell people that they need to do this is whenever he was home, we spent time together. And he's asked me since, we're all adults now, he's like, do you or how it affected me that he was gone so much because
Mm,
he covered all of Canada or Western Canada first, and now he's covering all of Canada with his job. And so he had to commit to that and driving around and going farms to farm and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, you put in so much time with us when you were home that we didn't even notice. Like
mm,
mom was awesome and we never lost anything like from the moments you were gone. And just the fact that he was willing to like work that hard to support us was awesome.
mm. And what do you think is the number one lesson that your mom taught you, or something you learned from her?
This is all the time is you make your decision and I support you in your decision. She never tells us what decision to make. You have to make it on your own.
Mm.
That has shaped me that's my entire life has been shaped on that.
So what do you think that was? Is that she taught you sort of autonomy, or that she taught you that like to give you, I guess, responsibility?
Responsibility, accountability, you are accountable for your decisions. And even when I made the wrong decision and she saw that we were making a wrong decision as the
Hmm.
kid, it's fine. Let's deal with it. Let's figure it out together, even if it's tears or if it's fear, whatever it is. But she never told you what to do.
Hmm. And obviously, then obviously very supported. So if you made if you bumbled, right, she's like, well, we're going to get through this. So it could tell you a bit of resiliency as well.
Huge. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So, what was what was one job that you had when you were in your late teen years? So that's 16, 17, 18. What did you do then?
Oh, what did I do? I worked at the rec center. It's probably my most official job. Uh, I mean, everything else is just farm work. You're always helping out, getting paid to clear out barns, whatever else. But the first real job I had was working at the rec center with my friend Sherry. And yeah, that was awesome getting to, whether it was just like mowing lawns or we got to help set up like the, you're gonna laugh. It's called the Hamlet Hoedown. Fort Assiniboine is a hamlet, and we had a hoedown every year. And we got to do all the hoedown stuff when we were working there at the center. So that's probably my first real job.
Awesome. You're probably the best hoedowner in town.
Oh, I led it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Now looking back, doing what you're doing now, like looking back when you were a kid, could you see that sort of how you ended up where you are today? Could you see yourself as CEO of a company and in sciences, and there's something that's always interested you, and that in between that and business?
It's easy to see that looking back now, and I think I probably do more reflection now than I ever have along the way or at any point along the way. And like trying to pull out the things that got me to where I am. I never thought I would be this involved in science, but I love it. And I'm not sure exactly whether it's the science itself, but the fact that I can use science to support people. I can pull people who are in science into bigger careers, supporting businesses. And to me, it all feels like I'm making the world a better place. It really does. I know that might sound hokey. I don't think I can make a decision if I don't think it's making somebody or something or someplace better. And that's now that I feel that way and I look back at all the decisions that I made to get myself here, that's the pattern that I can see now. And it came straight from my upbringing. It came from how my parents conducted themselves. Um, yeah, I get a lot of fulfillment from being a servant leader.
Hmm.
And again, I see that sort of servant sort of mentality or upbringing or value system now that I look back and I can see it coming through.
Hmm. You can see how almost how the importance of the values, whatnot, of your parents. You can see how that kind of weaves into that story.
Mhm.
So you went to school, and obviously you got your degree. And then, so where did you go from there to where you are today?
It's pretty boring. I've only worked for two companies my entire career. I got hired with Baker Hughes about 3 months before I graduated. Um, I spent 15 years with them and various divisions. They were the third largest oil field service company in the world when I started with them. They've
Wow.
since gone through a number of different iterations since then, of course. And after 15 years, we hit a downturn because that's what happens in oil and gas. And they want to shut down your product line and offer the redeployment somewhere else because they were very supportive. But I just sort of like, you know what? I think I'm out. I think it's time for a change. And I moved to OSP at that point, and now I've been there for 8 years. So I've only worked for two companies my whole career.
That's not boring. That's just sustainability.
It's weird. Nobody else does that
Well, it's
anymore.
true. Well, not nobody else. There's four others. But
There you go.
so how did you where did you start out with OSP and in the company, and then how did you end up being CEO?
I came on board just to mostly like a business development, a little bit in the sales side of it. I've done technical sales for a number of years and technical marketing and everything else. I'm always on that side. I consider myself if you distill it down to its simplest form, I do good marketing for science. But I think of it as a conduit for technology. I'm a conduit to connect academic and highly technical concepts into things that people can hold and digest and use
Hmm.
and can be commercial and create success. So when I came on board with OSP, it was sort of all of those industries, those markets I said that we work in, there was just so many of them. And there was just it was just throwing spaghetti at a wall in the sense that there was so much opportunity and we had to figure out how to focus. And it started with the client base and working through that. And then it's moved into sort of streamlining some of the product lines, really getting deep and wide in certain markets. And it just was a natural progression at that point. The CEO and president at the time, we worked well together. He became very reliant on some of this projects and initiatives we're putting in place, and we're seeing success from them. Yeah, and just made my way through the organization. We're small. We have a single owner. We're private. We bounce between, I think it was 15 up to 25 people, depending on where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And two is a lot of it was about, you talk about fits, was bringing in the right fits of people for based on that mission and vision. And when the actual final request or offer for the CEO came was our president and CEO moved on, and we had a CFO. Our CFO stepped into place, and he got us through the pandemic. On the other side of it, we just needed to make a change and really hit the ground, get some traction. And he was part-time, meaning he looked after a couple other companies under the portfolio of the ownership team as well. And so yeah, they wanted to focus on science, lead a science, the scientific mindset, curiosity and objectivity and flexibility and that type of thing. And they wanted to put those principles in place as far as our strategy and our culture. And that's who I live and breathe. And so it worked out.
So I would have to say, just by listening to this, is that you make science fun.
I'm like the weird Bill Nye, but not Bill Nye, sort of the business female Bill Nye.
Yeah,
And I have a whole
exactly.
team. My whole team loves science. Like this, like you said, you don't work a day because you love what you do. It sounds really gross and weird what I do, but oh my God, we make it fun.
Yeah, so I said you make science fun. It's not all nerdy and boring. You make it fun.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. There it is. Love that. There's the light in your eyes right there. All right. So, Virginia, what's the number one greatest thing? That's just gonna be either positive or negative. What's the thing that's happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
You say positive or negative now, so I
Positive or
didn't
negative?
consider the negative side of it. I've had my feathers ruffled a lot. My husband and I are serial entrepreneurs, and we're not afraid to take risks. And so you learn a lot when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it was the restaurant business or we've gone through a couple of franchises, we've done a few on our own. I don't know. It's the coup d'etat, the top of it is being asked to be a CEO, for sure. You go through the amazing feelings that go along with it. Like you feel like you've reached a certain level of achievement, and then you go through the imposter syndrome, and then you got to figure out how the hell you're going to do it. And I'm kind of at that stage. Imposter syndrome doesn't fully go away for a long time, I don't think. I've been told that anyways. But I always say learning to, and this is what I've probably learned out of all of these feather ruffling, is use your power for good. It's not that I feel like I have power over anybody, but when you have people looking up to you and you are a leader, you don't have to abide by anybody else's set of rules or game or what you think you should do. You really have to dig deep and do what you feel is the right thing to do. And being a CEO, I that's what I focus on more than anything. Is am I using this position and this leadership position that I'm so grateful to have been given to do good.
It's interesting that you think of the influence that you have over so many people. And so do you actually stop and think of, like, when making a decision or handling a people problem or something, do you stop yourself and sort of reflect and say, how can I use this for good?
Always. I have to lead in that way. Like I said, I can't turn this off. This is who I am. My values mean everything to me, and that's something I learned moving from a big corporation to this small company too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's not that you can't survive or you can't be successful or you can't do good in a large corporation in any way, shape, or form. But once I left there, I realized how differently my values or how much they weren't aligned with that company. Um, not a good nor bad. They
Mm-hmm.
just my fit.
Yeah.
And moving into OSP, I think about that with every single person. Um, every like strategic decision we make, I teach, I lead that way by action. I tell people if you made a decision and you go home and you go to bed and it's kind of making you a little, maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. Let's talk about it. And I see it coming out in meetings where people put up my hand like that. I don't think that's in alignment with who we are, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the purpose starts coming out in people, you know, and like, and it's the culture is that's what I feel like the entire culture our company's been built on is just that adherence to principles. And actually, Adam Grant had a post on LinkedIn this morning. It was something to the effect of loyalty is allegiance to power, but integrity is allegiance to principles.
Uh,
And that's how we lead. That's who OSP is. Yeah.
it's interesting, you said something about, if somebody puts their hand up or when you go to, they made a decision and they, put their head in their pillow at night and going, and so you said that, hey, maybe that doesn't align. Kind of sounds a lot like what your mom advised with you.
Mm, mm. Ah, you're totally right. Oh my goodness, don't tell her that.
Okay. Don't give her the link to the podcast.
That's right. It's
So,
true.
as you very well know, because work to do in Kelowna with your tech group, I know now you're a resident gooseologist, especially being the James Pond Award winner. The geese fly 71% further and faster when flying in a V formation, so 71% more efficiently. What do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in the V formation? What are your thoughts on that?
I I lead as a servant leader, and I truly feel like that is a big part of how a team comes together. Um, and you achieve that through collaboration and communication and visibility. Um, I probably get criticized for being too open and collaborative in my leadership style, but
Hmm.
I can't it's easier. It's absolutely much more efficient, I find.
Tell me more. Often been accused. That's a
Hmm.
very interesting statement of being too collaborative or too open.
Um, part of it is like I think yeah, I think while speaking, that's part of who I am. And so when we get into meetings, when we are trying to make decisions, it's like, this is what's in my head. These are the things I'm thinking about. This is how it applies to me, to you, to the company. Um, that can scare some people. Knowing too much or knowing the big moves, some people can't function in that space as well as others. It's more of like some people think future, some people think present, some think look back. So sometimes I need to temper that in the sense that I don't want to overwhelm somebody because I always give everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and two, I think context for making decisions means a lot. When you think about holding too much in and just like piecing out information, you have to manage all of that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to manage information at my company because I it's all there. It's all visible. I want your feedback. There's policy levels and HR levels to that. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
um, but and maybe too, I kind of expect it. You got to be able to handle it. So as a criticism, it's still sort of I'm pulling people into it. You have to be accountable to be able to function in this type of a culture, in this type of a leadership environment.
You said about, of course, and I know, and both of us actually, we think out loud. So we think by talking, and we learn by talking is how we learn. But it's interesting. So do you think it'd be advantageous or being accused of, I guess, somebody's how I'm going to word this. See, I'm thinking out loud. But it's a funny thing, and this goes back to the teamwork bit. But if you're just sort of thinking out loud and you're putting all this stuff out, so that's and it could overwhelm people, and I can see because it's very big, it can be very broad, it can be very dynamic, so other people might get a little bit overwhelmed by it. If you held that back and said, "Oh, I got to dial this back," so now you're not giving as much, would that be advantageous?
Very good question. I've never tried it. No, I'm kidding.
It's
I
very
give
difficult, trust
all the
me.
time. It, it's I can't hold back, but I do need to manage it better. So it comes down, for me, it comes down to some sort of like structural or process related things, whether it's how I run my meetings or how I frame emails. And it I I accept the feedback. Like again, if I do overwhelm you, say it, and I will make sure that we manage this differently so that I am clear on what I'm actually asking, that I get to the very specific objectives at the end of my verbal or how we record and prioritize some of the conversations that we have. So I don't think it would be advantageous of me holding back, but I do need to be respectful of other people's styles and manage myself in that way a little bit better.
So do you think it might be advantageous that, I mean, you get to, yeah, so you, as we said, like we have kind of verbal diarrhea, we had to throw it all out, right? But then if other people on your team knew that this is how you operate, this is what you do, and say, hey, help me, right, pull out the top key points, or help me sort it out, or help me digest, or help me tell you, tell me what's not going to work first, right? And if they can pick that out, do you think that then they would feel more a part of, so they're in more of a place to contribute versus
Oh,
a place
yeah.
to overwhelm?
Absolutely. And I mean that's my job too. I mean, I have to support them. I have to understand how they take in information too. Um, and it's some of it's very different for different people, especially on my leadership team too. Like
Mhm.
we don't have a standard way that we conduct meetings across the board. When I speak to this person, we do it in this way. When I speak to this person, we do it
Mhm.
this way. We use different platforms to capture information on. Again, I want them to be who they are as much as I need the space to be who I am. And there's absolutely no reason why that can't work. No reason whatsoever.
Absolutely, I love it. So by having proper communication, teaching, helping speak to people who they are, right, and asking for their contributions, being communicative, asking for input, and being a servant leader. Do you think that all those are key contributors to flying in a V formation?
1000%.
There's 71% right there. I love it. I love it. So this is going to be an interesting question, because you kind of led into some of these pieces here. But Virginia, what are you doing right now to better the pond? What ripples are you creating out there?
Oh, it's I I love my little pond. I like making my little pond really good and then always sort of I got I feel like I need to do more in the bigger pond. I love building a team of good humans because I think that they're going to make the world a better place on their own. Um, but they've told me that we want to do more as well. And we've had conversations about our core value of stewardship. And um, I need to lead by example, but in a way that brings all of them with me too. I hate CEO virtue signaling. what we as a company love is STEM, and everybody wants to be involved with STEM and youth initiatives.
Hmm.
We've contributed to doing science fair judging and supporting the Calgary Science Fair, and we just need to take steps out from there. And those are the big brushstrokes. The small brushstrokes are just, you need to live each day and know that the little things make a difference. I love our team because we think about each other as humans. For example, we had somebody on our team that forfeited their holidays for a number of months because we were going through a transition in one of our other positions. So she was covering for her this empty position, and she just kept putting off her holidays. And then when she went for holidays, her husband had a broken foot and she couldn't go anywhere, and she stayed home. So we sent her a big holiday basket just to say, hey. But I don't think of these ideas. The team thinks of these. Like, can
Mm.
you do this for her? I'm like, yes, absolutely. And it's never made a big deal out of. We didn't announce it, send an email. We just do it. And I feel like leading with those sort of actions and making those things easy and real, it sets a tone, and it the ripples go out from there.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. This is something, when I'm speaking, I say when one goose goes down, two more go down with it, and we'll stay with that goose until it gets healthy and joins their flock again. So this happens in nature. But I just sort of just in reflecting as you're speaking, thinking about, that one person. So number one, she gave up her holidays, whatnot, and the situation happened, but you sent out this basket. I'm sure it made her feel really good. So when she feels really good, then she takes that energy and then could pass it on to her husband. But then her husband has going out for coffee with a friend, or right, and these little ripple effects that just keep going out. And what's really interesting about it is you just never know. Like it's just, and I think about bettering the pond, and so many people will go into the case of, well, we're donating to this and donating to that, and that's great and it's wonderful, and I really appreciate the fact that people are out doing those things. But sometimes just small acts of kindness doesn't cost anything, but can create an absolute incredible, impact and a ripple that can go out way farther than you can ever see.
And if you create a habit out of it, like it used to be more of like the more you do it, the less effort it requires. You
Mm.
just live it, right? Like it's the little things that they matter. And you know what? You don't see it when you're in it. When I was in my 20s, I never thought that. But you look back and it's true. It's very true. And it creates the character who is you, like your virtues and the things that you're leading with or bringing to the world or bringing to the people next to you in the office, wherever.
It's something you just said just triggered something for me. And when I'm speaking, I talk about going faster isn't about going faster. Going faster is about getting rid of resistance.
Mhm.
Once you get rid of resistance, you automatically move faster with less energy. And you just remind me of that. So the more you do it, the less energy it requires, the easier it gets. So the more, what I'm hearing is the more authentic I am, the more real I am, the less resistance I have, which means that the greater energy that goes out with like you're getting more with less.
Absolutely. And like
Interesting.
my team is a high performing team. We punch so much higher above our weight class than anybody thinks we do. We just hired a new CFO, and he's just like, I can't believe you guys achieve what you achieve with this team, and how small and efficient and streamlined. And you don't do that with policies. You don't do that with process. That's not what makes it fast.
That's what
Right?
slows it down.
Exactly.
That's awesome to hear because, and I think that's interesting being a small organization is the more corporate you get, the more rules and regulations and process and right everything tightens up so much that you can't move fast anymore. You handcuff yourself.
Hmm. And if you have the right culture and the right purpose, like collective purpose, you'll
Mhm.
never reference a policy. You'll never need the policy. They're there.
Yeah.
You'll never. Yeah.
It's kind of like having a contract, right? Is that if everybody's doing it for the right reasons, you never need it.
Yep.
Contracts are made for lawyers,
Yeah.
not for people. All right. So what is one, thank you for that, by the way. What's one lesson that you've learned along your journey that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Entrepreneurship. It's a tough game. It's probably said way too often, but it's important, and that's like put on your own oxygen mask first. We talked about restaurants previously and
Mhm.
how that can take a lot from you. But anything that you commit to, there's good stress. There's good
Mhm.
working 100 hours a week that fulfills you and makes you feel amazing, but you have to take care of yourself. And my husband and I have both gone through that spiral where we haven't, and it takes years off your life, I swear, and you gotta
Mhm.
be on top of it. It's another thing that's habit forming, and that
Mhm.
it gets easier the more you do it. But yeah, look after yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of, we're continually creating our new norm, and more than, especially, to the point of burnout. So if well, I'll just work a little more hours, I'll work a few more hours, and that becomes the new norm, and then the new norm, and eventually, right, if you don't take care of yourself, yeah. If you won't say no to you, your body will say no for you.
You know that very well.
Yes. It will catch up to you. So put on your own oxygen mask first. Is that so? Take care of you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah,
A piece of advice.
absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. I have one more question for you, Virginia.
Mhm.
So it's a biggie. If but I know you'll have no problem answering this at all. Um, if you were standing on the top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what
Mm,
would you say?
that's heavy. That's
That's
big.
heavy.
I'd probably say use your power for good.
Okay, use your power for good. I guess we have a choice, right? We all have
Mhm.
power, right? We all came batteries included. So we all have a choice. And you can use it for either being self-serving or for bad for your own gain, or you can do it for the good of helping others. So this kind of think where I see you coming back to your whole sort of steward leadership and all this all kind of weaves through this.
Mhm.
Do you want to add anything into that at all?
I think the only maybe additional is use your power for good, and the good has to be what's innately inside you, like you said. It's um not the norm. Don't use your power for doing what the game is or playing by the rules. Do what's truly good. It doesn't have to be what everybody else is doing. It doesn't have to be the definition of somebody else's good. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You cannot find your treasure by following somebody else's map.
That's a good one. I like that.
So
Hmm.
all right. Well, so this has been absolutely wonderful today, Virginia. I was so looking forward to this because you're such an amazing human. Like you really
Ah,
are. Like right from day one when I met you. I really want to thank you for your time. I know you're very busy. I want to thank you for your stories, and I want to thank you for just being so incredibly awesome. If anyone wants to find you, Virginia, where do we go to find you?
uh, LinkedIn is probably the best spot. I live there.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that in the show notes. Get your handle on there so they can reach out to you.
And I answer LinkedIn messages all the time. I don't ignore them. So
Oh, good for
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
How many sales wins do you get in a day?
Do you know, I make it a point of like picking one, I make a meeting with one of the sales ones every month, just because you never know. You never
Hmm?
know. Somebody's got something really cool they want to talk about. So, and the rest I just say thanks, bye.
Yeah. What a month. Good for you. That's better than my record. So, well, I just, let's just give a little bit of shout out to your parents, because shout out to your dad for working so hard to take care of his family, and to give you everything that you needed to grow and develop. Your mom for making you so accountable, responsible, teaching you resilience. And what I heard too is really doing things for the right reasons and doing things for good. So those all kind of wrap up into this whole package we call Virginia, and all those things that you do because of that, to better the pond. You make the world a better place. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. You are a wonderful human as well. I really appreciate this.
Well, thank you. We're part of the Mutual Admiration Club, you and I.
There you go.
All right. So there you have it, folks. You had a great time here with Virginia Wornstaff, and this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond, to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Virginia.